Hey, everybody, welcome back to the ChatGTM podcast. I'm your host, Michael Beck. Here with me, as almost always, is Mr. Chad Horn. Chad, how are you today, sir?
Another good day.
It is
Again,
another
this
good
year
day,
starting
right?
off good, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, we're on episode 3 already. We have a fantastic guest that's coming up. I'm really excited, and I'm pretending he's not on the screen with us right now. There's a virtual green room happening, but let's just make it awkward. We're planning on going somewhere here this week. What's coming up?
The NRF big show in New York.
Really
It's going
big
to be
show.
cold, but I'm still excited for it.
Yeah, I'm excited for it too. Actually, you know what? If you think about it, that's where our media started. I
Fair
was
point.
following around Chatsy and
Yeah,
Julie and those guys, and the next thing
yeah.
you know, we're carrying cameras and doing the kind of stuff too. So it's a little cathartic. We've come full circle and lived a year.
It took us a few more months to realize that was a big thing for us, but yes, that's where it really started.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of learnings along the way, including long intros. So, but let's not pretend our guest isn't here, and I'm gonna give him a quick read in here. So today's guest works at the altitude where AI stops being a philosophy major and starts paying the rent. Right, Jason Riggs is the chief commercial and product officer of Audivi AI, with over 20 years of building real products in places like GoPro, Qualcomm, and PAR Technology, where all of us worked at one point or another. And he has shipped things, broken things, and fixed them again. He is also the author of the Mach 10 PM, a guide to moving at AI speed without unplugging the human brain. I love that. I think we get more of that in the world instead of, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. We actually have good things that are coming. And so if you want AI that actually drives decisions, revenue, and customer experience, this is one that really matters to you. Jason, I am beyond excited now that I actually read your bio and who you are. Holy crap. He's kind of a
Well,
big deal. Everybody, look how good Jason looks. No, just kidding. Hey, Jason.
I appreciate it. It felt pretty inflated, but I'll take it, Michael. I like it.
That's
But
okay. We're pumping stocks too, right? It's
yeah. Hey, man. I appreciate it though. Thank you so much, and thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here, and obviously, like you said, I mean, there's a lot going on, not just in the AI space, but in the QSR space, and all this technology is intersecting at a kind of a precarious time. I think we just got through the COVID technology shock, and now we're sort of getting into the AI piece. And I just remember at least my previous role, it was constantly a discussion of how can we use AI, how can we use AI,
right.
and now I think people are, and was my thinking at the time, was let's find the problem space and figure out if AI is the right solution. And I think that's what people are kind of backing into the logic now. If AI is not the fix it all for everything, it's not a magic wand. It's more of a mirror that kind of helps you see, where you need to go and maybe where the issues are. If you're doing things incorrectly, it's not going to fix them. It'll just give you hopefully a better plan to move forward strategically and tactically.
That brings to mind, you said before, I read an article you wrote previously, that AI changes decision making more than execution.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where are leaders still getting that wrong today?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think now you've got development, you've got they've got programs like Cursor, things that just really build very quickly. So there is an execution piece to it, but when all this stuff comes together and execution is, for lack of a better word, cheap because it's fast now, then the decision making becomes the bottleneck. So you've got these people, especially in product management and in other roles, that are sort of faced with all this data and all this information. They're trying to figure out, which of it's relevant. How do I make the best decision? And and again, that's not necessarily AI's job. That's the human critical thinking. That's all the data points from meeting with customers, talking to franchisees and all that stuff, and really understanding how the data comes together and distilling it into an action. Now, what AI does is it helps compress that, because you can get all this feedback, all this data that might have taken you a long time to collect previously. Now, instead of doing all that collecting, I think especially on the product management side, we've become more orchestrators of the intelligence. So like we understand sort of where to go to get it, feed it into this funnel, and then analyze it and make the human decision. That's the hard part, is I think leaders are still operating in a way, in a lot of cases anyway, not all, where they used to have these long, slow cycles of information gathering, making very safe decisions, and now you can make decisions very quickly. And decision making and leadership has become sort of the bottleneck, for lack of a better word.
It's almost like battlefield communication at this time, right? You have to have that information so quickly to be agile enough to move.
Yeah. And companies
So
just aren't set up for that yet. That's the thing, is they're not comfortable with that because it's not how things have been done.
Jason, we still see, even this week, I feel like I've seen a post or two, someone questioning, hey, are there any examples? Anybody have examples of AI actually delivering real value in our industry? Questioning like whether it's actually doing that yet.
Mhm.
And the world you're in, the conversations we have and see what's going on, we know the answer is unequivocally yes. So I'm curious, like for your perspective, what's causing that disconnect for some folks so far? And then how many days, weeks, months do you feel like nobody's even asking that anymore?
That's a really interesting question. I think part of that issue that you run into is what I said previously, which is just people were just looking for AI instances and things to use AI for because everyone's talking about AI and how do we implement it in our business and hopefully make our business better. I think if you really start with a legitimate problem, which is sort of the product management mandate, and then you figure out which solutions are the best solution for that problem, sometimes it is AI and sometimes it's not. Now, once you get to that point, if AI is the right sort of solution, then you have to pick the right tools, you have to use them correctly. It's like anything else. And by the way, I've spent a lot of time using AI and it's wrong a lot, just so everyone knows. Like whatever it spits out, you don't want to just push that out there and be like, here it is, here's the essay I wrote, because there's some weird stuff that comes out of that whole machine. So just, large language models, they have their limitations, they have their benefits. But it does take sort of a human curation component to it. That's a long answer to your question, but where I've seen it having benefit are things like, when people want to take a bunch of information and kind of distill it into a summary or something where they can make an easier decision without having to like go and let's say you have 200 support tickets. It would take someone a long time to go through and distill all the sort of problem spaces in there and all
Right.
the different bugs and issues, but you can pull all that into something very quickly now and have at least the information distilled, and then you can make that decision. So we did it with inventory even when I was at par, and there's all kinds of places behind the scenes where AI is having a positive impact. I think it's just a matter of, again, are you solving a problem that needs AI, and if so, are you doing it with the sort of right amount of critical thinking and human judgment involved, which is I think what a lot of people are worried about is that it's just going to, or maybe they think it's going to somehow be a replacement for humans, and maybe that day will come. I don't know. But right now, it does require a human in the loop, I guess, if you will, at least in some
Hmm.
cases. Now, for what we do at Audivi, I mean, I think
Not so
it is a
much.
very clear problem. Sorry, go ahead. Were you going to say something, Mike?
I was just
Sorry.
saying, not so much. It ought to be human in the loop.
Yeah, we are not a human in the loop company. I just want to make that clear. But what we do, it really does solve that problem very well. I mean, it's not easy. It's a hard problem to solve, believe it or not. You guys know as well as I do, a lot of different companies, big companies have tried. But it is something that when you get it right and you apply the right logic sort of internally, it does solve the problem really well. And I think, like, I always like to say, if we're doing our job, you won't even think about the AI part of it, right? You'll just know it works. It'll process your orders accurately. It'll save your guys time, all that kind of stuff.
Well,
And so,
real quick, Jason, I don't
yeah,
think we've set the plate for the audience. What does Audivi do?
good question. So
Let's
we
start
we
there.
have an
Yeah.
automated order taking solution of sorts, if you will. We all know AI order taking has been sort of the hot topic for the past few years. A lot of these products have been Gen 1 products using sort of older technology. Some of them were, coming over from, phone answering services, things like that. And that's fine. I just think they weren't sort of native AI order taking, which is what
Hmm.
Audivi is. And I think, what you've seen is just the version one. I always like to say, I think I gave this line to someone at our company who uses it quite a bit. But if V1s were still around, we'd all still be using Ask Jeeves and MySpace, right? So, like, I think you
I
never
miss
kind of want to
Tom.
be never want, you never want to be on the very front end of that stuff, but like now we're into V2 and now the technology has gotten really good and it works, and I think you're going to see a whole different paradigm in this new wave of sort of AI order taking, and Audivi's sort of at the front of that. So we process the orders when you come through the drive-through. We can handle exceptions, upselling, all that stuff, feed it directly into the point of sale, and it just takes that whole process and automates it to a degree where it's not that you don't have to think about it, but you definitely have to think about it less. And the humans in your restaurant or your QSR can do more human stuff. And that's the interesting thing. I believe AI can actually make us more human, not less human, because it gives us more time to do the non-automated tasks.
Yeah. So Jason, we've been researching voice AI companies for at least a year, and and there's so many sub-facets of it. You focus fully on the drive-through. There's the phone ordering, there's reservations, there's all these different applications, support. And I've heard smart people at these different companies all talk about the drive-through use case. Some have said it's the easiest use case.
Mhm.
Some have said it's the harder one. Now, I have an opinion on whether it's an easy case or a hard case. What is your take?
It sounds easy on paper, is what I will say. And I remember when when I was at my previous company, we were talking to a lot of these people who'd been doing it for years, and some of them are still around today. And what I would say is, if it was an easy problem to solve, some of these very large companies that have thrown a lot of money at it would have solved it. And I'm talking the biggest brands you can think of in the QSR space.
Yeah.
The challenge becomes, and the reason why there's nuance to it, to your question, Chad, is the challenge isn't like, can you just say, I want a number one and get whatever's in the number one and just be on your way? The challenge is, the modifiers. And let's say you sell Pepsi and not Coke, and someone orders a certain brand that, is sort of the opposite of what you sell. How do you handle that? And you start getting into all these sort of edge cases that actually become relevant, because you want that thing to be at least 98% accurate, right? That's the whole promise of this technology. And again, I don't want to overstate it, but if it was easy, you would just have somebody would have solved it already. And you guys know as well as I do, all these big companies have tried. Even some of the companies that make the equipment, the ecosystem, they've tried.
Yeah.
It's just more complex than it seems. And everyone's got different menus, by the way. And then if you think about it, you got different day times when certain breakfast is available and it's not. And you've got seasonal items, and you've got like all these different, things that are constantly changing in the menu, and you have to manage all that intelligently. And it's just, I think it's harder than it seems, especially if you're just doing it for, as sort of an add-on feature to a product you already have. But at Audivi, that's all we do. And again, it's solvable. It's just not as easy as people think it is. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Without naming names, Jason, where are the places that companies that are doing this are falling down? I mean, compute cost is something that's clear, or the token cost, I guess, I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Mhm.
But where are these hiccups that are either dropping accuracy, fidelity, right, or cost, or even ability to adopt or roll out?
Yeah, it's interesting because yes, you're right. There is a cost to the tokens, and the AI itself just has a fixed cost of sorts. And I think there's this notion that, without getting too nerdy here, that as new versions come out, they're going to get cheaper. Like the law of technology. Technology gets faster and cheaper and all that. That is actually flattening out. And what you're seeing is, now when new models are released, old models are deprecated. So the cost is kind of staying at a certain level. And it's not becoming cheaper. And I think a lot of people banked on it becoming cheaper.
Oh,
And so you have trade-offs. Like, do you want to rush the engagement with the customer so that you can have a cheaper engagement because it only took a minute instead of 2 minutes? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe the speed
sure.
of service is a big deal, but you want it to sound natural. You don't want it to sound like they're rushing the customer along. So there's all this nuance to it. And I think the companies that are struggling today, they probably focused on creating the best experience, and not that they have in a lot of cases, but I think that was the primary objective, and worry about costs later. Like, we've got investment dollars, we'll burn through this, we'll get a prototype going, and then when costs come down, like, it'll all start making sense. What they're finding is those costs haven't come down maybe as quickly or as much as they thought they would. And so you have to think about it differently. Like, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can offset that cost in terms of, how you cache things and how you manage things, that are ordered regularly. And, there's just different methods you have to put in place. But again, if you're not architected for that, it becomes hard to go back and retrofit your product, to do things that way. And so I think it's hard because there's a finite cost. And some of these companies, have to charge as much as $2,000 or $3,000 a month, just to solve this one problem, when we all know that, when a POS and all that stuff, doesn't even cost that, per month.
Right.
So it's a huge ask, in some of these cases.
Yeah, what's your thought on that?
I mean, there's so much to it. I want to ask you this, Jason. I have a family member who recently started at Starbucks, and to use these words, it caught my attention when she told me, I got stuck at the drive-thru, right? Placing, hearing the customer place those orders. And apparently, and we've heard this for a while, like that's not a job people like.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas people do like giving the guests the food, they don't like taking the order.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you see as the before and after in terms of the culture, vibe, feeling inside the restaurant with the staff after you eliminate that task?
It's a really good question. I think a few things happen. One, as you guys know, a lot of these QSRs have efficiency metrics. So there's one that I spent a fair amount of time with, that from the time the customer drives up, you have to complete the order within 120 seconds, 2 minutes. That's really not much time. If you think about it, to have someone place an order and actually give them their food. So I think you take that stress component out of it, and then you take the accuracy component out of it. And the accuracy, as long as the order is captured accurately, and the person that's actually fulfilling the order has more time to focus on packaging it accurately, then theoretically the whatever it is 70% order accuracy for drive-through number should increase, right? Because you've got sort of that cognitive load of taking the order, as long as it's accurate, taken out off their plate, and now they can just focus on putting the right food together, handing it to the customer, and getting the order accurately correct in the shortest amount of time. Because it's a huge, what I'm getting at is that whole process is very stressful, and that's why people don't like it. And we've all been to the In-N-Outs and the places where they've got these massive lines, and my son actually worked at one for about 2 weeks and he couldn't take it. And they've got the line busters with the tablets, and yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be the most stressful role in any of these places, and it's for good reason. Because if you think about it, a lot of these guys are driving $1 million or more a month through their drive-throughs, and if something goes wrong, if the customer comes back, you're just under a high stress. You're under a high stress load every day just trying to get these things right. So I think in the future, again, you take that off the plate, people are happier. You probably get better employee retention. That's the other thing. People don't talk about that. But really, you don't want to have to constantly be training new people to come in and work at your restaurant. So you get employee retention, you get efficiency, operational efficiency. Hopefully you get maybe even more upsells in a lot of cases. I think it's weird because there's this dynamic where people don't like not speaking with a human, but then we all know that kiosk orders have a higher average ticket because people will throw in those whatever extra desserts or larger food or whatever. So
No judgment.
I think it's interesting. Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic where hopefully it flows better, people are less stressed out, and the people that are getting served, the customers, are actually getting faster, better service that's more accurately delivered.
The thought about just product leadership as you're thinking about tools that you're working on, right? If a product leader isn't using AI today, what are they actually risking beyond falling behind?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think if you're not using it today in any way, I think I don't want to generalize it too much because every role in every company is different. But I think from a product leadership standpoint, the biggest risk you have is falling behind, because you can't pull together and synthesize as much information manually without this as you can with it. And I think once you start using it, I'll give you guys an example. I was one of the early adopters for the Amazon Echo. I don't know if you remember that thing. I think people call it Alexa now, right?
Yeah.
I got them all over the place.
Yep,
I have the big two.
absolutely.
It was $99 if you were a Prime member. I got one, right? And same thing with Eero. Like, I'm early adopter.
Echo Show was my boy. Loved that one. Yeah.
Anyway, point being, I remember I got the two, but I'm like, I don't really know what I'm going to do with this, but it makes a good speaker, right? So I'd play music on it or whatever. And then after a while, and I think AI is very much like this, as you start using it, you're like, oh, here's a good use case. Like, I can check the traffic, on my route to work, or I can have it remind me to pick up some groceries or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like AI is like that. Like, I'll be sitting here looking at, 4 competing estimates for some work I need done on my house, and I'll just feed them in and go, tell me the difference between all these and where should I push on some of the pricing. And it's amazing, like, how once you start using it, you can distill stuff so quickly. And again, then I think it comes down to the human to make that decision. But if you're not using it, you're risking falling behind someone else who's just moving more quickly. It just makes you more agile, and it gives you better clarity of information so that you can make the right decisions more quickly.
Well, so to add on to that, right? So if AI is removing friction from the execution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the new bottleneck?
I really believe it's not in the tactical. Like, the tactical can happen very quickly. I mean, I don't want to undersell developing and all the stuff that goes into that, because again, even the tools I mentioned earlier, like, you can't just take whatever comes out and throw it out there. But I do think it's in the decision making, because I think especially enterprise companies are just used to moving at a certain pace that's not comfortable to move much faster, because you've got boards, you've got roadmaps, you've got these things that used to be these like 4-month, 12-month artifacts that are sitting around, and people are used to operating with that mindset. But really, the roadmap now can evolve almost like monthly, if not weekly, because you have constant feedback loops coming in. And if
Yeah.
you get dialed into those feedback loops, you're much more dynamic, you're much more efficient. And we were talking about before this started how quickly the paradigm changes in this space alone. But in technology, it changes very quickly. Things are moving very fast, and and more each day with AI in the mix. So I think you got to get into more of a loop mentality, where you're always getting that feedback and you're always making adjustments based on that feedback. And you have to be more agile. And I think agile is one thing as it's described today, but I think people really need to think about even that word and what it means to be agile as an organization, because if you can't distill information quickly, make a decision quickly, and pivot in some cases quickly, it's going to make things very challenging. But again, it's a new paradigm, it's a faster mindset, and I just think a lot of companies, it's going to take them a while to shift to it.
I'm going to come back to that pivot, but Chad, go ahead.
So, Jason, as a professional in this industry who is clearly leaning into AI, where has AI made you the most better, and where has it made you worse, if anywhere?
I think, well, I'll start with the worst first, because I think that one's pretty easy. I think, like when you see a lot of things written on, like, let's say even LinkedIn posts, like there's a ton of M dashes and really AI tell giveaways. And,
I do love me some EM dash. Hello, AI, in a world of.
So I actually used to be a copy editor way back in the day. I published on a magazine, and M dashes are like a rarely used thing in real life, but now they're like the AI is lazy, to be honest with you, so they just throw an M dash in there.
Yep.
Anyway, that's the point. Is I just feel like if you take the output and literally just regurgitate it as original thought, then you've sort of missed the point. The point is to give you like a starting point. Like if you have to write even a business.
Lattice.
Yeah. Like if you have to write a business plan for, let's say you're opening a new franchise or something, or you want to find out how to make your restaurant more efficient or whatever, it should be the starting point, but it shouldn't be the final product. Like it takes some human judgment, which is, I have this whole philosophy called speed with soul. And
Yeah.
speed is the AI part, and soul is the, like, what you actually do with the AI. So I do think there's too much of a mindset that, like, whatever this tells you is going to be accurate, and you should just take that as the gospel and go execute on it. That is not the case. I can tell you with 100% certainty, because I spent enough time with it. It does require multiple data points, like thinking, critical thinking, and it requires a new skill set, I think, that product managers have kind of gotten away from, which is the more strategic mindset, and understanding where you need to go, not just how you're going to get there. So that, to me, is the failure. Where it's added value, I think, and where you see it again is like to me, it's really good at doing very factual things. Like you can feed a spreadsheet into it and get very clear feedback on, how to distill that information. You can feed a bunch of support tickets into it. You can feed your inventory into it and figure out, like, predictably when you'll run out of certain items in your restaurant. All those kinds of things I think it's really good at. And those things it doesn't hallucinate on very often.
But pulling it from the ether is a different story, right?
Yeah, exactly, because it gives you that starting point. But having said that, here's the thing I want to caution everyone on when it comes to at least how you use AI, is AI, it doesn't have skin in the game. They can tell you, go ahead and order those 5,000 things, like, you're good. You order them, AI is like, oopsie, I guess I was wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't, those language models don't really care at the end of the day, because they're not the ones losing money. But I think it depends on how you use it. You have to use it responsibly. I think if you do and use it for the right tasks, it's got tremendous value. I think the misperception is, whatever I ask it, whatever comes out of it is the truth and it's right, and I'm just going to push that forward. So I think it's mostly philosophical in terms of where it fails, not necessarily situational. But yeah, it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes.
It's funny. South Park did some parody on the sycophantic nature of AI, saying everything you say is a great idea and let's explore that and keep going. Right? Just it's pretty funny how far down the rabbit hole you can go.
Yeah, and all the models are a little bit different, by the way. So I really encourage people. But I always encourage people, like, if you get an answer, challenge it, because there have been times when I've challenged it.
Yeah.
And it'll be like, oh, you're right to call me out on that. And it's like, I'm glad I did, because otherwise I would have made a huge mistake, right?
Hey, let's circle back to that the word pivot, because I know that Audivi did something very brave in your creation cycle or development cycle of your solution, having already had a solid product out there, you guys made a decision uh, not too long ago.
Mhm.
I mean, really, to start on a blank sheet of paper. Is that right?
Yeah, it was probably I've been with the company since August. Yeah, since August. And I would say a couple of months in, it felt to me, and I think, others in the organization, that we just weren't going to get there with the product we had.
Hmm.
And it wasn't a matter of whether or not it worked. It's just a matter of how scalable it was going to
Yeah,
be. It's
exactly.
typical startup, right? Like, you create the prototype, it works, you get customers interested, and then it's like, okay, now how do we productize it?
Right.
And when we had that honest discussion with ourselves, the decision was made to start over, really, to a large extent, because we had more information from the market. We knew more about where we needed to go. We knew more about the nuance of the problem. Um, and we did. We just basically started from scratch, like, I want to say 3-4 months ago. Rebuilt it from the ground up. Again, it was not completely from the ground up, because we had a lot of learnings and we had some stuff that we could
Right.
certainly repurpose in terms of logic and all that. But yeah, we have a much, I think, better, scalable, stable platform than I think we've ever had. And the other mistake, by the way, I think people make when they're too afraid to let go of this sort of sunk cost that they've already put
Yeah.
into a product, is they don't these things don't have like a 50-year shelf life. It changes quickly. And again, you're not going to be burning down your product and rebuilding it every 6 months. But especially if you're a young company and you have to get it right the first time, you can't be afraid to take that chance, even if it means, some things get delayed or some expectations change. Because the thing I always think about is, 6 months from now, how is this going to end up? That's, I
Right.
think, the best mindset to keep, if it's an employee or a product or whatever. And personally, I just couldn't see in 6 months us being in a good place with the old product. So I'm like, well, we've got two choices here. I don't know how this other one's going to end, but I'm pretty sure I know how this one's going to end. So let's revisit this. And we
Mhm.
did. And it's been working great.
Great. One more question, Chad, just to pin on
Yeah.
this. Um, there's some people over there at Audivi that when I was talking with your CEO, and we don't really talk about him, he's just awesome. But the minds behind some of the understandings and wisdom in the development of these solutions, by whether it's human behavior, right? Can you tell me a little bit about the folks over there and how they're thinking about this?
Yeah, we've got, honestly, and I've worked at some pretty good companies, GoPro,
Yeah.
Qualcomm, companies have a lot of smart people. And I
You
can
still got
honestly,
hookups? No, just kidding.
um, I probably could, actually, but I could just honestly say, I could honestly say that Audivi has, like, some of the, hands down, the smartest, like the smallest group of smartest people I've ever worked with. Just really, I think, thoughtful, intelligent, but also action oriented. That's the other great thing. They're not, just sitting in an ivory tower pointing down and sharing academia. Like, they're actually getting
Right.
stuff done. And it really comes down to an understanding of optimization, like how you optimize the models. We've talked about propensity modeling a lot, which is like, if someone orders this, what's their propensity to order that? And we've got people who've been literally doing that research for huge companies, like big Fortune 500
Kind of
companies,
wrote the book on the subject,
for years.
right?
Exactly, yeah. Like, literally wrote the book on the subject. So it's amazing when you have, especially with a team the size of ours. We're not like a 500-person company, obviously. Where you have this group of individuals that's all committed to the cause. And really, I think people are there not because, I mean, they're there for probably a bunch of different reasons, but they're there because the problem space, again, is interesting.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult problem to solve. And I think that compels really smart people and attracts them to come and try and solve it, especially at a company that's up and coming in a space that's fairly new. Like, I love solving new problems. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I think it's super interesting, and I think it's super compelling, and that's why I'm there.
Geek
So,
out
so
on it.
Jason, I want you to put on your futurist hat a bit. So we talk about this problem of the drive-through, and you're solving it. So now, fast forward a few years, you've solved this problem. How does the industry evolve? How does hospitality evolve? How do guest behaviors evolve as a result of you having solved this problem?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, I think this technology in and of itself that we created, Audivi, has been sold as a, hey, you won't need as much labor. You can cut down your labor costs. And I think there's maybe some truth to that. Like, that may be an eventual outcome. But what I like to think of it more as, you can actually, have more time to interact with your guests. You can have more time to give your guests a good experience. You can have more time to process more orders even, right? Like even that's a benefit. People don't have to wait in line as long to get their orders. I do think it's going more in that direction where drive-through is going to continue to be the prominent channel. A lot of the customers I talked to, big QSRs at the beginning of COVID were like 60, 70% drive-through. Some of them had no drive-through. And then they all had to quickly pivot and figure out like, how do we actually sell food if we don't have a drive-through, right? So I do think that trend is going to continue. You're going to see smaller footprints. You're going to see more drive-through activity. I think the current generation really is okay with kiosks, and in a lot of cases, a lot less interaction. I think that used to be, more common where you'd interact with a human. I think people don't mind interacting with kiosks and drive-throughs. So I think, going forward, you're just going to see, again, you won't be thinking of AI or is this automated or is this a robot? You'll just be thinking of a cleaner, smoother experience where the human interactions you have are more meaningful, and the things that maybe humans aren't really necessarily the best at are sort of taken care of. And you remove that cognitive load, not only from the customer, because they know their order is going to be processed accurately, or they're going to get the right food or whatever, but you also just deliver an overall better experience from the hospitality side. And that's across the board. I mean, that's QSRs, hotels, like anything in hospitality you can think of, I think is going to have some element of that. Where again, these sort of, I don't want to say mundane tasks, but taking orders is not something that I think people really enjoy or are necessarily good at. Like, it's just one of those things that should be automated. And then, the things that the humans are good at, you're just going to see more of. So I think all in all, it's a benefit. It's an improvement in all the channels, but particularly in the guest experience.
If we're thinking about just the world and you having a conversation with the CEO about AI right now, right? What's the decision they should slow down on? Because there's so many things being thrown. In fact, Chad will tell you this about me. I've been sweeping AIs out the door at the end of this year, like, all these subscriptions and I needed that one. I want to try that one and this one, and like, where do you like? I mean, you don't have to get all at once, right? But what are the things they should slow down on? Because I think there's some wisdom there.
I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I kind of took this. I did the same thing, right? Because I'm this crazy early adopter. Like, if there's something cool out there, I'll be the first one to buy it.
Is your garage filled with a bunch of stuff you don't use anymore? V1 of a VR headset, V1 of this, 2, 3, 4, 5, the Island of Misfit toys,
all that stuff. Exactly.
I'm that guy too.
And I was one of the first to get Eero, but I got it on Kickstarter. I don't know if you guys know what Eero is, but I got it on Kickstarter. It took like
no, but I bought the stupid rabbit and I've been pissed off ever since.
Anyway, it took me like 2 years to get it because they kept delaying the launch date. I'm like, man, I just need a router. I'm going to go get something else. But anyway, I did get it. But yeah, I was the same way. I'm like, AI for Canva and Midjourney and like, Cursor. And I was just going nuts because I wanted to try it all. I wanted to see like what the value of it really was.
I feel like a Werther sampler pack. Oh, go ahead, Sid.
Yeah. And I would just say this. I would say, goes back to what I said before, which is just you identify your problem. Like, what are you trying to solve for? Is it like managing your finances, doing your taxes, figuring out your household, flow, your schedule, whatever, whatever it is in life that you're trying to manage? I would say, figure out what the problem is, and then is AI the best solution for that? And you may not even know, but you can at least go explore AI tools that, would help you solve that problem. And then I do think it's a matter of trying different tools because they do have different user interfaces. Your point earlier about agreeing with everything you say, some of the models certainly do that more than others. Mm-hmm. Some are more academic. I'm not going to mention names, but you could probably guess which ones I'm talking about. And and some of them are just more like almost like your buddy in a bar. Like, you can kind of just have like or
your drunk uncle, but yeah,
your philosophical conversation or what have you. And so I think it's a matter of finding the right fit. And, again, I think it is okay to try a lot of them you can try for free for some period of time, and just figure out which one works for you. But I do think there's a danger, just like with any new technology, of getting captivated by the promise and captivated by the shiny objects, and maybe realizing at some point that the value is actually supposed to deliver and the promise, sometimes isn't there. And I think really it's just a matter of starting with the problem. I always say that start with the problem and you'll find the right solution. But I think if you start with the solution and back into a problem, that's where you go wrong.
Well, we got time for one or two more questions, so we got to start landing the plane. Chad, what's you got here?
In case it's my last, Jason, where are you having the most fun right now?
Ooh,
in the chapter of your career.
Wow, that's a good one. It's an interesting question. I think, for me personally, like having come from a public company before Audivi, um, I'm just excited to be back in the startup game. I mean, it's so much fun. There's so much opportunity. There's so many new problems to solve. They've got so many smart people in this group. Like to me, um, being on the front edge of something like is just exciting again. Because when I started, believe it or not, I'm pretty old. Like I started back in the MP3.com days, when digital music was a new thing, and that was exciting. It's like people were trying to figure out digital music rights, and I just loved it. I loved being on the edge of sort of evolving technology, and I feel that's what we're doing at Audivi. It's great. Like there is no answer, there's no gold standard because it hasn't been solved really yet. People have solutions, but I would hardly say it's been solved, and that's been exciting building to that gold standard. So to me, I love the pace. I love the ability, as you might have guessed, to move quickly, and to make sort of risky decisions when you have to, which we've done. This for me is like the perfect fit. I think there are people as they get older, especially when you get as old as I am, you start getting maybe a little more conservative. You're kind of riding it out. You've done your thing, and now you just want to like you got a few, however many years till retirement, and I guess I'm just wired differently. I mean, I never wrote a book before, and I was like, let's try that. And it's really not as easy as people probably think it is, but it's exciting.
Well,
Well,
that was literally my next question. Tell us about that book. So the Mach 10 PM,
Yeah.
all right, a guide to moving at AI speed without unplugging the human brain. What is that all about?
So the whole point was, I again was getting constantly bombarded with these questions about like what are we going to use AI for? What are we going to use AI for? And I had a lot of coworkers that were again trying to figure out how to use AI, but they were sort of there's this notion that, and I've always said this, like I don't necessarily want people who do a lot of stuff. I want people who get a lot of stuff done. And
Ooh,
there are people who confuse motion for or for actual velocity, for momentum, when really you could be going in the wrong direction.
or circles.
Um,
Yeah.
and so for me, it's one of those things where I was like, I wish there was just a guide, a field guide almost, something that gives you the tools where you could, as a product manager, which is what I've done my whole career, where you could take these tools and apply them in a way where you excel, you exceed the normal human velocity, right? That's the whole thing about Mach 10
Right.
is anyone who knows that paradigm knows no human has ever achieved Mach 10, not without their face
Tom
melting.
Cruise and Dark Star?
Yeah, yeah, maybe. So the point of the book is you can move very quickly, but you need the clarity and you need to know exactly where you're going. Otherwise, it can be extremely treacherous. And that's the whole point. Is that kind of speed without clarity is just total chaos. And so the point was like, wow, I can't believe there's not a book out there that just really explains this in clear terms, doesn't get into super technical jargon about AI and language models and all that stuff, and just keeps it very like, here's some tools you can use, here's a mind shift set to think about. And I think it's one of those things where it's just, for me, it just was a book I wish I had, and I was just said I'm just going to try writing it. I'll tell you what, the indie publishing space is a whole different world if
Did
you've
you do
never.
the Amazon route, or how'd you go about it?
Yeah, I did. I
Yeah.
did the Amazon Kindle publishing route, and I've just learned again. It's been a huge growth opportunity. I've learned so much about publishing and marketing and all these things that I haven't really done a lot myself. So for me, it's been a really rewarding experience. Not because I've sold a billion books, but because it's more like I'm actually seeing people using it. In fact, it's crazy. Like my neighbors who aren't even product managers, they've come over and said like, "Hey, I've got a neighbor who does construction for pools in like the Caribbean." And he's like, "Hey, this is a really great book. I've had so many things I can derive from it. It's really useful." And so I'm almost like, maybe I shouldn't have made it just for product managers, but that's what I know, right? So
Maybe it's a branch of things you could do. It feels like it says "Don't panic" on the cover and comes with a big towel for you Douglas Adams fans out there.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's been an interesting experience, but yeah, it was just something that I've always wanted to do it. I started a little while ago, and then I
Love
just was
it.
like, I'm going to finish it up and get it over the finish line, and it's been a great experience. Just seeing people derive value from it really is the most rewarding part of it.
Jason, maybe Audivi can create the Jason AI to be the audible voice for your audiobook.
Yeah, I mean the voices are fun, and I think I told you guys, but I do have a background in radio, way back when, which is how I segued into digital music, which is how I eventually ended up in product management and all that. But yeah, it's I think the voice stuff is so much fun, and we talked about that earlier, even about all the different voices you can insert in there. And yeah, I mean, I just think the thing about so I'm just going to end with this. I think there's two really interesting things about AI in general, which is one, the possibilities are actually unknown. Like we don't really even know what the possibilities are, which I think is fascinating. But also, it's the only technology in my lifetime that we didn't design for a purpose. There is no sort of end game that we're trying to get to with this technology. It's just like, let's put it out there and see what happens. And I think that scares a lot of people.
We're evolving a species, my guy, but we're not going that direction right now.
Yeah, and I think that scares a lot of people, understandably so. But anyway, I just go back to what we're doing at Audivi, and again, it's just so rewarding to be on the front end of that and be harnessing that technology to hopefully make owner operators' lives better and make a better customer experience for everyone every customer who goes to those businesses.
Amen. Well, I got a lineup of some fun to wrap this up with, which is a set of rapid fire questions. Don't spend too much time there. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. AI tool you personally use the most right now?
ChatGPT.
One product mistake you see teams make over and over again?
I'm gonna go quick here. There's a few of them. Over and over again, I would say lack of understanding of the customer problem.
Okay. Speed or precision, which matters more right now?
Those are good. I think speed matters more right now because you can iterate quickly even if you make a mistake.
Okay. One signal leaders should pay more attention to in 26.
One signal, I would say overall, it's probably customer satisfaction. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? And it's just if customers are satisfied, then the rest of the variables matter a lot less.
Okay. Best advice you've ever ignored and why?
Best advice I've ever ignored and why? That would probably
From 1978. No, I just
does that mean it was good advice and I should have taken it?
I don't know.
Yes, it does.
I'll tell you what it was. The best
Buy
advice.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a good one. The best advice I've ever ignored and why. When I first started out in product management, someone said you should really find a special domain and stick with it, and then you'll go really deep in the industry. And I think there is something to be said for that. I'd probably be a much like bigger, executive at this point in my life. But I will say for me, that's never been the route. It's always been a new challenge, a new domain. It's been exciting to just kind of, not stay in one domain my entire career.
Okay. And we're almost around the bend here. If you had to sum up great product leadership in 5 words or less, what is it?
Wow. Giving me the 5 words, huh?
He's gonna give me one finger here in a minute.
I'm counting out the words in my head here. Maybe I'll just make it simple. To me, it's customer obsession. At the end of the day, it's being totally obsessed with the customer, what their day-to-day pain points are, what their experience is, and whether or not you're actually solving meaningful problems.
Love it. All right. And last but not least, what's one buzzword you'd happily delete from the AI vocabulary for forever?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. Buzzword I'd happily delete. It's funny because I don't even know if it's a buzzword, but I think it's prompt. I think the word prompt engineering, prompt this and that, I think it just oversimplifies not only the interaction that you have, but really what the purpose of it is. And I use prompt in my book, by the way, because it is the vernacular. But I think it's just really misleading. It's like you're prompting it to do your task for you, and I just don't think that's the case.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for going through that. That was awesome. Great job. Great feedback.
Great.
Absolutely. That was awesome. That was absolutely awesome.
Awesome. Well, glad to be a part of it.
This is like a fueled episode. Like you got a lot of good stuff going on. I definitely want to have you back on. This was great.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you get all your questions in?
Sure did.
All right, fantastic. Well, everybody, this has been a fantastic time with Mr. Jason Briggs from Audivi AI. This is a product mind that is absolutely bright. I'm so excited about the products that they're bringing to the market today. And like Jason was saying, if it helps people, God bless it. If it actually has real utility and moves the needle, that's what I think AI is all about. And I think we all probably agree with that pretty heavily. So, well, we're going to close up. This is ChatGTM Season 2, Episode 3. And that's a wrap. And as always, we like to close with a little bit of I don't know, call it virtue signal or whatever it is, but random acts of kindness. Sprinkle that stuff everywhere. You never know who needs it. You never know whose day you're going to change.
Mhm.
Just show a little love.
It's a
Thank you,
good
everybody. Have a
reminder.
fantastic day.
Thank you.